This is actually what John Dewey said 100 years ago, and we've been misunderstanding him ever since. So Dewey said, the purpose of public education is helping people understand what it means to be free. But he had a very specific answer to that question. And so what Dewey said was, what it means to be free is helping young people develop the capacity to exercise self-control in finding and fulfilling their own unique purpose in life. For Dewey, it was the democratic concept of freedom. And so for all of us, the challenge is, how do we orient everybody in the school system, everybody in the larger community, to a deeper recognition of that as the goal and a deeper understanding of how to actually see it through? And again, I would say Dewey is our best resource. See, the problem is there's this false dichotomy between freedom and structure and between art and science. We do not have to choose between these two. In fact, you know what Dewey said was the ideal model for any educational environment? The scientific method. This is Dewey, the person that a lot of educators use as their shield when they basically employ a system that is all about freedom of choice, not about freedom of conscience. But what Dewey said was, the scientific method, I don't care if it's science or history or an elective, that's what you focus on, which means asking questions, conducting research, constructing a hypothesis, gathering information, analyzing the data, and adjusting our response accordingly. For those of us that are educators, that word data, right, seems like a dirty word now, and in a way it should be, because what data really means, the way we use it now in education, is basic skills, reading and math scores. It doesn't mean anything else. But that's not what Dewey meant. That's not what the scientific method is about. In fact, the original Latin definition of data is something given. What would it take in order to make sure that we were able to restore the original meaning of data in our approach to improving teaching and learning? What would it take in order to strike the right balance between art and science in how we think about teaching and learning? And what would happen to our school system if it was oriented around a deeper understanding and appreciation of what it means to be free in the democratic context? The good news is, there are answers to those questions all around us, but it will require a different way of seeing.
In the article, Teaching an Art or a Science, the author argues that it's important to have an aim, a means, and an end. While this method is very scientific, the author uses examples to prove that art and creativity are needed alongside this methodology. The same author writes that a teacher can be regarded both as a scientist and an artist, the school being their laboratory and the students being the chemicals. The artist role comes in when the teacher needs to connect with the students and be empathetic to their learning methods.
We always think about the things we have to do, the things the state requires us to do, but we're always allowed to go above and beyond that. So we dot our I's, we cross our T's, but we still look at research, valid research, and then we use all the creative possibilities that come our way to make learning enjoyable and hopefully exciting for our children.
Teaching is a complex task and it is a science, a very in-depth science that engages people in all their variety and in all their aspirations.
By science, we mean a systematically structured body of thought, a systematic way, series of ways of observing learning practices in schools or out of schools. That's what we mean by science.
First, we have to acknowledge that teaching is a highly complex skill. It involves a deep understanding of the subject matter and the ability to explain complex issues in simple ways. But it also requires an understanding of psychology, pedagogy, as well as a wide range of management skills in order to get the students first quiet and then excited.
Teaching is an art form, it's not a delivery system. Teaching is an art, it's an arts practice. It's about connoisseurship and judgment and intuition. And we all remember the great teachers in our lives, the ones who kind of woke us up and that we're still thinking about because they said something to us or they gave us an angle on something that we've never forgotten. So being a great teacher is not just about knowing your stuff, it's knowing how to get people interested in all that. The other way of thinking about it is teaching for creativity, where these aren't polar opposites, they're part of the same process, but where your emphasis is on encouraging other people to develop their creative capacities and skills. And people often say to me, as if it's all self-evidently true, that you can't teach creativity. Well, you can. If we had more time, we could debate it, but the fact is, you can.
Needs to focus on developing learners that think like artists, learners that are creative, curious, seek questions, develop ideas, and play, which means we need to be much more intentional about how we communicate art's critical value and how we teach for creativity.
Maybe most importantly, great teachers first get their students excited and then keep their attention through storytelling and engaging activities that spark their imaginations.
Teaching is like art because you start with a blank canvas. And I feel like the blank canvas starts as soon as the child is born. And once they get into the educational system, each grade builds upon that canvas. And I don't know if you like art or if you don't like art. Either way, you look at your piece and you look at it from different angles and you're constantly adding upon it. And I feel as though the foundation starts once they start school. When they get to first grade, we build in the structure. In second grade, we're starting to put in the rooms in the building. And it's all on this canvas. The blank canvas is the brain of the students. And we're adding to what their schema is, what they already know, and what they are continuing to grow and learn. So it's a scaffold. And the scaffold is around their building of education. And as an artist, you have to know where to put what to make it work.
I think the art of teaching is something that's really hard. It's not necessarily a concrete thing, but I always describe it as kind of the magic that happens in the classroom when a lesson just goes really well. You have a really great classroom environment, strong relationships with students, mutual respect. I think that is really the art of teaching, when it's hard to place your finger on exactly what it is, but something that just works in the classroom.
For example, has historically and now sometimes been termed as an art. And when people refer to teaching as an art, they mean it's a way of relating, of a way of being creative or persuasive. It means you're a type of person that somehow has some natural instincts to influence other people. So teaching as an art is an idea in some people's mind. There is another idea associated with teaching, of course, which is teaching as a vocation. And then it means a kind of job with particular routines. Quite often it involves a public servant with skills that are acquired which fit in with certain standards.
Education not just as an art, education not just as a vocation, but education as an academic discipline, as something that's to be formally learned if you want to become a teacher or somebody involved in the world of education.